Today I'm joined by Emmy-nominated composer Roger Suen, whose score for Bring Them Home finds a powerful contemporary sound for connection, survival, and cultural continuity. Roger, it's so great to have you on the show.
Thanks, Robert. Nice to be here.
Roger, when you're scoring a film with this kind of cultural responsibility that touches on things like identity, spirituality, sovereignty, and healing, all entangled in one, what tells you that the music has found the right point of view?
It's almost kind of easy with film scoring or documentary scoring. You just when I watch the film, there's a feeling that it feels right. I if I give myself goosebumps, but beyond that, also the correct information. Is it doing its job, right? Because it's not just music; it's film music. So is it doing its job? And yeah, so it makes it easy just having the film. That's what tells you what to do or what not to do.
Yeah, I've always wondered this with composers. I often ask the question. I just feel like, is it really as subjective as I think it is? Whereas when you're making something, and if it gives you goosebumps or the hair on the back of your neck stands up, then perhaps you might be doing something good. Like, is it really as subjective as that?
It's funny. It's like, is it subjective or objective? Is like a conversation we could have for days on end. You
That's
know,
so true.
I feel like there's definitely some biological things behind what makes music, do certain things to us, make us feel certain things, biological. And then there's some, society programmed kinds of things. And, us being in the Western world, we respond a certain way versus, somewhere in another part of the world. So I think that all mixes in to seem like it's magic. Um, but honestly, that's how I approach it. I kind of don't worry too much about analyzing it, and it's try to come from in a sense of wonder, and hopefully that reflects to the audience.
Yeah, I do think music is magic. There's something that music can do that I don't think anything else can. So let's dive in a little bit
Yeah.
deeper. What were your conversations like with Daniel, Ivan, and Ivy like when you were defining the score? What input did they want to give, and talk me through that collaboration?
Yeah. So I mean, one of the biggest things that we were talking about was, how do we represent um, Native Americans and more specifically the Blackfeet tribe in a way that really does them justice, not just as a caricature or a cliche, right, of what Native American music or people are. We are at the end of a century of some really, bad musical cliches of Native American people. And so, how do we break away from that? How do we still reference the traditions that make it so unique, historically speaking, but also like, what are the cool kids doing nowadays? Um, and what are they listening to? What kind of music are they making? So that was a lot of fun, and in referencing the traditions and also referencing um, essentially what the cool kids are doing right now is a lot of hip hop, and really taking that style of music and using it as a form of expression for cultural repression and all the things that they've gone through. And I think it's just really cool, this becoming more of like a melting pot of American music almost. You know.
It's so fascinating because the final track, Bring Them Home, is such a bold swing, and I was not expecting it at all. And to me, the fusing of like modern styles like hip hop with tradition, instead of defaulting to purely orchestral kind of prestige documentary sound, I think really works. It's so cool. What was part of the goal then like to me it feels like the you wanted indigenous identity to kind of live in the present tense. It's not something that we just see in a museum. Is that really what like the goal here?
Exactly. It should really feel like something that's current, it's alive, it's a breathed, um, lived experience for the people that you see in the film. And then we want the audience to also feel like they're right there in the community. Um, and so we tried to set up a lot of these hip hop elements throughout the actual score. Obviously, you can't have it for every cue. That would be a little too much, but we want to kind of, pepper it in there appropriately, in addition with, vocal elements without it being just super on the nose. We want to pepper in the kind of percussive and woodwind, well, namely flute, historical traditions that we have. And then I think and we didn't necessarily like think of it in terms of building it to the end, end credits and crawl track. But I think it was a nice lead in because as much of it as much as it was like kind of a shock or like, oh, whoa, this is unexpected. You can imagine it being even more unexpected if we hadn't kind of done a little bit of priming.
Yeah, definitely there are a few palate cleansers in there that we don't even know why they're there. They just, to me, seem to be quite appropriate for the score. And then when we hit the final track, it's like, okay, you've been breadcrumbing this the whole time, and which makes the score so beautifully cohesive. But
Thank
I'm
you.
actually still really curious, Roger, about not leaning into cultural cliche, because I would imagine that would be a very difficult challenge on any project like this. So I'm wondering, were there moments where you thought, yeah, we've probably veered too far into the cliche territory and we need to pull back? Was that always a conversation that you were having?
Yeah, definitely. Mostly with myself, just as I'm in my
Yeah,
little cave. Um, as you're writing it, there's a feeling that you get when you're like, this is too much. It's like cooking. You're like, no, this is way too much garlic. We got to tone this down. Or I remember like playing Street Fighter as a kid and you'd use the same move over and you're like, no, this is too much. You get that kind of similar feeling. I can't quite explain it beyond that. And you just
yeah,
get a feel of it. And you kind of rein it in. And it's a constant kind of tightrope walking
yeah.
there. And then also when they went and screened the film throughout the process and to the actual community and see how community members felt was obviously super helpful. And
Yeah, the feedback, I guess, in the room is always going to help you calibrate as you hone the score to the final product. In fact, I always imagine, is it ever a final product? Eventually, you just have to kind of let go of it, don't you? You could work on it forever if you wanted to, but eventually, you have to have some confidence that yes, this is it. Let's go.
yeah, exactly. And it's a hard choice to make because yeah, you could do it till the cows come home or the buffalo come home in this case.
The buffalo. Yeah,
But yeah, at
yeah,
some point, we're not a band making an album that we can tweak for years on end, and we're doing a job here, and the job is to tell the story as best as we can.
yeah. I wonder if Billy Gladstone's narration had any effect on the pacing of your cues and or the density of the orchestration because she has such a calm authority and steadiness.
Yeah, what's interesting is I never heard her narration at all. Um, it
Really?
it came
Wow.
in after I was done, and so we just had temp narration, which was mostly Daniel Glick, our director, which was kind of funny because like I've worked with him for, I don't know, 10, 15 years. And so when I hear his voice, I'm like, oh, that's just my buddy Daniel. So um, I don't think I was able to not to say that this what was written wasn't inspiring, but in terms of what you're talking about, that performance wasn't, quite there. So it was really like it's one of those things if was like if I can make it sound cool and you can feel that cinematic feeling without that, then you add in her voice and I mean, it's going to be
Yeah.
gangbusters. So
I'm really surprised. I did not know that. To me, it just they both tracks come in together so seamlessly. The soundscape for the film just really works, and yeah, that's a testament to you and of course the sound team and the creatives behind the process. Let's just dive into the set piece because I really want to rack your brain about the Buffalo
yeah,
Drive.
yeah.
You've described it like an action sequence through rhythm and texture, which is really appropriate. So, how do you build propulsion while protecting the spiritual weight of what's happening?
Oh God, that's. I honestly wish I had a very clean, like, oh, this is exactly what I do. It's a lot of throwing spaghetti at the wall. So I didn't start with that track. I actually started with the opening track, which there's some similarities. Um, so it's the two things I kind of draw on. Like the rhythm's got to be there. You know, you got to feel that beat, right? And how do we
Yeah.
make that beat unique? Let's draw on these elements that are alluding to the musical tradition, right? And I think in doing that, you create kind of a fresh sound by doing your interpretation of a well-established musical tradition. Does that kind of make sense? And I think,
It does. Yeah.
yeah, by me swallowing it, digesting it, and then kind of spitting it back out, it kind of becomes this weird
Yeah.
Roger and Daniel version of it. And so we start with that, and then that kind of gives the vibe, and then the other part is the emotion. And I think I tend to be old school in thinking about emotion, and it really just comes down to a good tune, a good melody. It's just the real basic stuffs, harmony, melody, and you kind of just stir it all together, and that's how you I think that's how I do it, anyways.
I'm really loving all the analogies to food, given that I'm such an obsessed foodie. So this is perfect for me. Film scoring and food. I mean, but really,
Yeah,
that's a joke, but it's also there's some truth to that because
yeah.
this is about you creating something with ingredients and, as you said earlier, seasoning, making sure that you got the right balance. And then you get a track like this Buffalo Drive. And then I'm just wondering as well, actually, as an aside, what about the Buffalo made percussion? Because that's a really interesting factor here that maybe we might just quickly do a deep dive onto that particular issue. Talk us through that.
Yeah, so there's some actual buffalo instruments, and the most prominent one, and Daniel was telling me about it, and talking to some Blackfeet musicians. It's really simple. It's basically a string of buffalo hooves made into
Oh,
a rattle, and you just shake it. And so it's in like almost every cue, I want to say. And it's
wow.
just a very simple sound. We depart from that a couple of times because the buffalo hooves they have a lower sounds because they're bigger hooves. So they also
Mhm.
have like deer rattles. So if you want just a slightly higher pitch, it's like a hoof
Wow.
rattle ensemble, I guess. Um,
Wow.
it's kind of weird, but I think it was a lot of fun. They also obviously make drums out of the hides and things like that. They're called buffalo drums. So really simple devices like that. And, maybe in a more traditional scoring context, that might just be part of the percussion ensemble. But, we're like, we're an intimate story. So let's have like solo buffalo shakers. Why not, right?
Why not?
Yeah.
Why not? Let's do it. I mean, you give it a go and you see if it
Yeah.
works. If it doesn't, you recalibrate again, as you said earlier. But this really works. And when
Thank
you
you.
read into your process, you think, wow, some really innovative use of instrumentation here that I wasn't really expecting. In fact, that brings me to I always like to do a bit more of a deep dive onto particular tracks that stood out to me. And for me, the first one is Any Initiative. I love that track. It's that's the one that features this gorgeous contemplative, like string element overlaying, I think like an evocative, like a heartbeat, like percussive element. It's hard for me to really put into words. What are you going for when the score acts as like a calming reset or counterpoint to some of the more dramatic moments? Because those parts of the score are just as important.
Yeah. I mean, it really is like with anything in life. Without the contrast, without the calm moments, the big moments wouldn't be so exciting or dramatic. Um, so whenever you have a moment to just chill out, really, you just everyone needs a reset. Um, and so when we find these moments, not only do we have that kind of utility, um, you also get a moment to I think it's like getting to feel the humanness of the story. And so that someone from, like, I'm in New York right now, someone off the streets of New York can understand what it's like to be in Montana in this moment. It's almost like you get to feel the people like they're your friends or you're having a conversation with them. At least I think. So
Yeah.
um but you need some quiet time for that. You need that intimate feeling. You need the music to get out of the way. Um, So hopefully those moments, give a little bit of one-on-one time.
I love that. That's a really good way to put it because then, of course, it really contrasts with a track like, for example, like Working the Buffalo, um, which features propulsive percussion, groaning bass elements, chants, breath work. It's so wonderful. And to me, felt like a really great example of how you fuse contemporary genre styles with traditional elements that we talked about earlier. So, what is behind those distinctive choices, particularly working with the chanting, which could go really over the top and be very annoying,
Mm.
or it can actually work like it does here, where it just really seems to fit into the vibe?
Yeah, so the vocal elements and the chanting, it's like I almost don't want to say it partially because I'm embarrassed, but most of that was me singing.
Really?
And I'm not a singer. Like,
Wow.
get a couple beers in me on karaoke night, I can do okay.
Same.
But yeah, so most of that was me. We really had to kind of work within the resources that we had on this project. Most documentaries we're not going in with big studio kinds of backing. So um get creative, right? And so a lot of it was just me singing. And I honestly felt like the singing moments, a lot of them were the more reflective stuff. So that just, it obviously needed to be at a certain scale. And then the more exciting stuff, I could kind of yell it out. And it's not the most like finesse, but I think hopefully my excitement or whatever comes out. And
Yeah,
that's basically what
I
you
had no
have.
idea.
Yeah.
That's insane. That's so cool that you're able to just do that. Obviously, you don't have an unlimited budget on something like on a project like this, which is independent and small. But geez, you really make the most of every possible scenario to get the best quality sound out of the final product. It's amazing. The penultimate track, end song, is a really great example of expansive, like inspirational, hopeful aesthetic that I think the score
Thank you.
sits in beautifully. What inspired what feels like the thematic culmination of the entire score on this one particular penultimate track?
Well, thank you for saying that. Like I was saying earlier, I'm just a big fan of a traditional melody, right? We're probably a similar age. We grew up with like those big John Williams melodies and whatever. And I'm still a sucker for those. So I try to start that from the first cue, the opening cue. We called it, we call ourselves. And the theme comes in there, and it's very simple. It's actually not really like Native American per se. It's more Americana. I think more of like Copeland-ish, and that comes in throughout. And so hopefully, when you get to that ending, we can just go full on, cinematic, and it should feel good at, at the end of it.
Yeah, it should feel good, and it does. It absolutely does. So I'm going to get super nerdy for a sec now,
Yeah.
because I just can't help myself. So you earned a news and documentary Emmy nomination for this score. I honestly just would love to know what it's like to find out you're nominated for an Emmy, and then secondly, what does that recognition mean to you?
It was a total shock. I didn't even think to submit this. Daniel, our director, was so gracious and like helping me. He's like, I think you should do it. I think this is really great. And I'm like, really? I'm like, okay. And then he just called me one day. He's like, hey, you got the nomination. And I got a little teary-eyed. I didn't know. It's still hard to believe, even being here in New York, a couple of days before. Um, Honestly, I hope it really just is it gives more visibility to independent filmmaking. I hope it gives more visibility to Native American at large and a lot of their story, which they don't teach us in US history in high school. And I really hope that this can shine a bigger light on that, and it really deserves to be seen. And I hope it brings more projects, cool projects like this to work on because I love this stuff. Not just documentaries, but narrative and fiction and TV shows and all of it. If there's a chance for me to like combine cool styles and really just have fun and help tell big and small stories, like I hope that's where it leads, and.
Yeah, there's two streams to this. There's obviously the pat on the back from people in your industry. That always feels amazing. But secondly, it will give you the opportunity to maybe be seen or heard by a larger audience. And that, of course, will lead to the next Roger Swen project, which I look forward to hearing. So that's very exciting. And by the way, it doesn't matter if you win or lose. At this point, you will always now forever be known as Emmy nominee Roger Swen, and that's freaking cool,
Thank,
man. That's really cool. Got to
thank you,
admit.
Robert. Yeah, yeah.
Um, so, final question is this: what do you hope audiences carry with them after hearing the score? Because it plays to me less like accompaniment and more like an act of remembrance. And there's a lot to dig in here, but what would you like the end result for audiences to feel?
Um, I really hope they feel warm and fuzzy. I feel like it's such a weird time in America right now. And I just feel like I mean, it sounds super cheesy, but I just really feel like, again, the person in New York, the person in the Deep South can feel like, man, I could be friends with this person in Montana. And I really just hope it's warm and fuzzies and we're all friends kind of a situation in a time when I think we really need it right now.
Yeah, don't we ever? That's a real understatement. Don't we ever? And we need more work like this to kind of bring us all together as opposed to keeping us apart. Roger, thank you for taking us inside Bring Them Home. To me, like to frame the score as beautiful or sweeping is fine. And of course it is. But they sound too generic and it diminishes the sophistication because I feel like you're navigating cultural responsibility and historical trauma and environmental restoration and contemporary Indigenous identity. And it also made me feel really good. So like you ticked all those
Uh,
beautiful boxes. Stunning piece of work. Thank you for your time today.
thank you, Robert. It was lovely to chat with you.